Okay, this is quite an exciting webinar for us. It's the launch of a new product. We've named it UniPhi Chrysalis, where we take the existing UniPhi product and transform it into benchmark information that you can analyze and get insights on your portfolio of projects, creating new butterfly effects across your portfolio, hopefully in a positive way. So yeah, thanks for joining, and let's hook in. So I shared this in the second webinar a couple of weeks ago now when we were developing apps. And, from this perspective, from a data analytics environment, what we're looking at here is the fact that UniPhi consolidates and through its osmosis of the way you're managing projects and reporting on them, creates a governed source of truth for all of that project information coming across a whole range of different data sources. That includes direct entry into the UniPhi web application, UniPhi being a portfolio, project and program management application, capturing information directly to help project teams collaborate, deliver on budget and time, and track those things and report on them. But equally capturing information from email, from Excel imports into the application, from MS Project or P6 imports into the application, and for the synchronizations into ERP finance applications as well. So in the middle layer, you've got the UniPhi source of truth captured across a whole range of functions that project and program managers are worried about. And then out the other end is a REST API that's modeled into a really well-structured semantic model, fully documented, that powers business analytics, data warehouse integration with other tools that don't get captured in that first pipe. And also what we're presenting today, which is integrations into new benchmarking capability that you can throw your own client system at. So that's the sort of overarching architecture of the UniPhi application. What this presentation is how we take that now into the new Chrysalis product that incubates that and puts it out the other end as a beautiful butterfly. So just to reiterate on the UniPhi side, the breadth of the in-field data capture that you're taking. So every UniPhi instance captures the full project record at the point of work. So it's not one of these, capture a piece of information in one system, hack it together and get it into the application. About working on a day-to-day basis on projects, getting feedback loops instantly through the application, and then having that distribute to whatever stakeholder needs it in the way they need it. So no rekeying things in, no manipulation, which creates its own challenges in that you can't tell the story you want to tell. You have to tell the story that's real. Now, when you start doing that and you're a large organization, and we've rolled out globally now to a number of organizations with a bit of a niche use case of this around project controls and commercials on major projects, what that gives you is when we do that, we normally do it by setting up discrete UniPhi instances. So they'll have an enterprise or multiple enterprise deployments, typically globally between 3 and 6. So there's 3 or 6 UniPhi databases already. But then when there's JVs partnering with other companies, or there's a need to bring in sub-consultants and have clients access the system at its very large scale anyway, we'll create new instances where some clients that we're dealing with will have 35 UniPhi instances covering hundreds of projects, but some of those 35 will be projects within themselves, instances. And it's like, how do we actually then consolidate all of that data? And is there an opportunity in the process to make that data even better? And so that's what Chrysalis is doing. So it will extract the information from all the different UniPhi instances. It will transform that information into standard structures. In this first release, we focused on that project controls and commercial element to standardize around uniclass structures. The 2 uniclass structures we're looking at are the way that people are defined in engineering. So uniclass engineering classifications for people, and the way that activities are defined in the uniclass structure for engineering. So, in the UniPhi instance itself, activities will be called whatever people need them to be called to track that work package, and that person will be classified that way, and they need to report rates and communication back to the client. So we need to be able to infer what that means in the UniClass standard and tag that person and tag that activity with that UniClass standard. Once we've done that, we deposit that information in a newly formed data lake. At the moment, the actual files are called Parquet files, which are amazingly good at compressing data. So the UniPhi databases can become quite large. And in this transformation process, we reactivate quite nimble analysis of the data by using these Parquet files that really truncate that information. Then we present that information to our end users and our clients to really build their own initiatives around what they do with that. We're expecting that we will also build our own apps that come out of the box using that data. But as we don't own the data, our clients do, and they know their data better, where our expectation is that the insights that they want, is it predictive warning on in-flight projects? Is it building estimates on new jobs? Is it resource planning across the portfolio? What is it that they want to get out of that is one of the things that we'll work through with these clients, case by case. In addition to that, we will start to build new transformation engines that are broader than just the UniClass model. The next one on the chopping block is cost breakdown structures for quantity surveying type businesses or quantity surveying type use cases. So globally, there's numerous standards. There's not one standard for capturing costs on a project, and typically before construction, they'll be called elemental standards, but there's more than one of those. And people don't necessarily even build their estimates to those standards anyway. And then at tender, you'll get a tendered price against trades. And this transformation engine will reclassify all of that data into a standard that you've chosen for your business. And so you'll be able to get global estimating and global tendered prices and global final prices, in addition to the TPIs, which already exist in UniPhi, the tender price indexes to inflate those prices, but also the quantities around those prices as well against elements, so that you can look at quantity efficiency ratios and understand the insights that they can give you around a project and why one was more expensive than another, etc. So that's the next one, and then there'll be subsequent ones after that. So even if you've only got one UniPhi instance, which a lot of our users will have, there's still going to be benefits to transform that data into a standardized model in the area that you use. It could be life cycle stage gating using a Reba system where you want to know how long it takes to get through certain phases within a commercial tower sector that you're operating in. It could be, residential type developments where you're looking at different councils and how long development applications take, and you need a standardized milestone structure to track that across the portfolio of projects. So these are the sorts of things that this Chrysalis project is going to bring to the table for our users to use. So before I go into that, how that works, there's a few people on the call who are new to the UniPhi platform. So just taking a step back and having a look at this use case so that you can visualize where the data is getting captured and what sort of data is being captured for this transformation to occur. I'm just going to jump into a couple of deployments and show you how that works. And so this is the UniPhi application. I've got two of those applications running with different data sets. This is one of those ones which is a standalone major project deployment. So instead of this being a portfolio of projects, which is typically the case, it's a portfolio of activities. And these activities are where people are going to capture their data. So this drop-down list is the workspace where data is captured. And the types of data that's captured on a daily basis is against all of these modules that go across the top here. So then when we work and look at the specifics of an engineering commission with commercials and project controls, the elements that we're trying to capture are people, their rates, and how that rate gets built up and changed over time, because these programs can go for a long period of time and rates will inflate. Their classification, what their role is on the job, and then from that, the time phasing of their effort. And so when are they going to be working on what package and for how long? That then gets baselined. So that gives us a baseline plan. Then we start capturing timesheets against that work breakdown structure. That gives us actuals. That will generate invoicing through the finance activity using all of the contractual complexity that may exist around that. And then, actuals to date, comparing that with estimate to complete, getting an estimate at completion. Then through the time module, we'll be tracking progress through a stage-gated earned value methodology. And so as these work packages issue drawings, typically, because there's this design phase work, there is construction phase as well, construction phase services through RFIs. But during design is the main element of the controls for this particular instance. And what you're doing through that is tracking, has it been issued for interdisciplinary review? Is it with project engineer? Is it ready for construction, etc.? And each point of that release, it gets an earned value percent complete. So some of the interfaces for that, we've just upgraded and demonstrated in the first UniPhi webinar for 22. And just to rehash on that, if I go to the resources module, I go to resource planning, UniPhi's portfolio first. So we'll always see, all activities. And I go into this WBS activity and you'll see quite a busy screen broken down into classification and people. I can pivot that back to just people or classification and simplify it a little if I want to. And then I can, build up those hours, have those hours scheduled and phased out over time. This is an actual forecast view. I can snapshot this into a approved budget, which gives me my baseline. That would move into the budget view there, and I can compare in this view both. But that gets me my first metric, which is the budgeted cost of work schedule. As we look at status states over time, we'll get that value updated. Now, those hours are being converted both into a cost and a revenue pipeline, as well as percent, which is that resource planning element I was talking about before. And so we are looking at this from a dollar or pounds or euro-based perspective, depending on your currency. So that sets our baseline. These people here will then timesheet to these packages. So when I go into the timesheets module, people will be selecting that work package 1. If I select Annie Lennox, she's got WBS activity 1, and she will be timesheeting to that. She will have rates. So if I go back to the resources module and I click on Annie Lennox, she'll have a rates history. And in the rates history, you're now able with UniPhi 22 to add additional pieces of metadata about that. But you can see that rate history changes over time. It's driven off classifications. Now, they're not going to necessarily match with Uniclass, but that's a first place for us to look in our model. And these rates you can see have changed a little bit, not a lot, only way back in 2020 for Annie, but that's and then one of the things that people don't understand about the UniPhi database and how rich it is from audit history perspective. If I go and change one of these things, so if I say actually she's now a drafting manager, that's going to change the rate down. And you'll see that's given us an information here that says that the actual costs are being recalculated. Not just actual though, in terms of the resource planning data is as well with this new rate. And so that will adjust the current forecast, not the baseline. And it won't update the information, it's transactional. So we know it was 250 before, it's now 100. So when we go to raise our next invoice, it'll say that we're giving you back money in this instance and why, and it'll distill that out to the end client. And so both from an actuals perspective and a forecast perspective, this is managing all of that from a transactional basis. So there's full audit history of that. When I look at the contact details of Annie, you'll see down here that you'll have the ability to actually create extra bits of metadata around Annie. So you can see here, it says package design lead, and you can add extra other bits of data. And so when this transformation happens, we look at all of those instances. You'll also note that when Annie timesheets, a lot of the time they're required to enter comments, and timesheet invoice entries are rejected by clients if there's not sufficient detail. So that actually becomes a really rich source of reclassifying these activities into the right activity that relates to their Uniclass structure. So we now have quite a rich reference point for what this is all about. And then against the activity, we'll have that as well. So when I go into an activity here, it'll have its own metadata structure here that will be picked up. This is a hydrology task or a project management task or what have you. And that'll be different from project to project. So again, we need to be able to contextualize that, use that as a first port of call to classify the activity in the transformation. And then use other pieces of information like, is a tunneling engineer working on this activity? Are they commenting on doing tunneling work or tunneling design work? And are there issues associated to this that relates to tunneling, or is it traffic modeling and that sort of thing? And that's what the engine's looking at. We know what the model is. We know where to go and look at different fields for activities. We know where to go and look at different fields for people and get that information back, see if it matches with the Uniclass mapping table, and therefore classify it based on that. Now, I mentioned that we're going to extend then into the cost system. So when you go into the cost module, you can look at it from a building perspective instead of a roads or a train line or something like that, which is the infrastructure view that we're just looking at. In this model, we're looking at a National Public Works Committee structure, which is the Australian Elemental Standard. But if I pivot this to the NRM standard, you'll see it's similar. It's called substructure and superstructure with upper floors and that, but there's a few other little things in here that are different. So again, the element with comments and with contracts that are led against these, well, they'll be led against the trades, but mapping those trades back to the work that they're doing, we can then reapportion that through the contracts module back into the superstructure elemental system. So in that transformation, you'll get both a trades-based breakdown and an elemental breakdown to your standard for both the attended price and the as-built, but you'll also have all of the estimates over time that were directly imported to the elemental standard, standardized into this transformation load. So that's the next phase of development to make that happen. So there's the unified database capturing all of that information. The unified database has that very well documented REST API with its semantic model wrapped around it to leverage the connections between each endpoint to drive the connections of the information you want to cross-pollinate. So when you're looking at classifications, you're comparing that with regards to people, and there's people there, and within the people they have rates, and they also have roles, and they have a whole bunch of other timesheet information down here. And you'll see the timesheet has an audit history that has all that flow. You've got the TPI, which is indexing to a location and time, so on and so forth through all of these different endpoints. And that's all extracted out into the Chrysalis container. And so going on to the next presentation point here. When that transformation happens, what it's doing in that transformation is looking at the uniclass standardizations and looking at any other public available information, but containerizing this. So nothing goes out of the container, it just comes in. So what you will do is pass the metadata enrichment application a brief description of the project. And because a lot of these, or if it's a portfolio, you can use the project description field to get that populated dynamically. Now, because these projects are high profile, a lot of the infrastructure ones, there's a lot of publicly available information that we can bring in to provide color and enrich our own data, including in some jurisdictions, full specifications. Once they're complete, they get published. And so that gives us a whole rich way of classifying that project, so that when you're looking at the end result, you can say, give me all the tunneling projects for roads around the world, give me the bridge projects around the world, give me the train, high-speed rail projects around the world, give me the freight lines around the world, what have you. And that will distill the list down based off that metadata enrichment and put it into this containerized lake for you to do something with. So what I'm going to do now is just flesh out this section a little bit technical, but it's important to understand how that happens. So the first part of the Chrysalis application is an administrator saying what UniPhi deployments will you add to your container. So if you're a UniPhi client with just one database, that'll just be one. But if you've got 35, you can add each 35. And as you do so, we'll ask you, we'll give you some feedback information, and we'll ask you how do we map certain things if you know them already, so you can help train your data into our model. And so this second deployment, you can see you've got the long description, which will be used to create the query into the internet to create metadata to bring into the application. And you also have this facet mapping, which enables the activity classification to start to occur. Is, do you have a discipline drop-down? Do you have a zone drop-down around activities? And if none, then just none. Click add deployment, and that kicks off the packages that call all of the different REST API endpoints to build the Parquet files into the container, transformed with extra fields describing what the uniclass classifications are. Similarly, with resources, it will display a list of how many we've mapped and then also what we haven't. So in this instance, there's a warning that 69 discipline values that exist in the application have not been mapped to a uniclass role, and then you can manually map those yourself. Or you can actually, sorry, jumped ahead there. Or you can actually get assistance through classifying with AI, but there could be some, that would send data to the LLM that you'd have to work through if that's open to be installed or not. or just do it manually. Once you've done that, you're now sending all that information into the container. And what it's done is followed this methodology here. So you start out with all your different unified deployments around the world. You put it through our transformation engine. It has a whole bunch of security wrapped around that. That's what that interface was providing. You'll see that there's a credential coming in here for you to actually access the deployment. So if you don't have access to that deployment, you can't do this. That then goes through this is highlighting what the purple is saying. So first, just extract all the raw information, merge it into the endpoints, the new Parquet files, and add in the extra fields that have been identified as the uniclass mapping to give it the gold class data set that you will actually use. So you'll only be working with gold class. Through that, we can anonymize all the data, so people who are in here won't come through to here. And then there'll be another Entra ID access layer for you to build your own workspace services, self-service analysis into there, authenticating with an Entra ID to access that data. So a lot of security, a lot of guardrails around the data actually getting out and not being able to be used as a training system for any other AI, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end, what you're able to do is really how long is a piece of string. So in this particular mock-up, you're picking which type of asset you want to analyze. You're giving it some parametric information about what your particular new job is, and it will bring out what activities that typically takes and the profile of the different engineering resources and their sort of effort scales and a high-level cost contingency timeline potentially and things like that. So that was just literally a mock-up in Photoshop back in the day. That's actually 12 months old, that one. But in here, what we've got is sort of version that was done the other day. Now, last 2 weeks ago, we were building apps in 10 minutes, hitting this UniPhi API, and this was the apps that we built in those webinars. And this S-curve one is a good example of where you can then end up with this uniclass benchmark one. These are all commercial tower projects. They're not real, I mean, they're all commercial tower projects that have happened over time, and there's quite a lot of them, all of similar height and expenditure. And this is their own value profile. And so these projects here, the early ones, will have particular characteristics that enable them to earn their 100% quicker. Majority are clustered around here. So as a visual, you can see that there seems to be a common earned value profile, and then you get your train wrecks coming out here. And so the next step within the uniclass benchmark or the chrysalis method is to say, well, what are the drivers that drive one or the other? And then bring in your in-flight data into this to give early warnings as a potential use case. So we built these apps in the last, there's a timesheet analytics one there. This is timed out on me while doing this demonstration, but and then this is the one hitting the uniclass gold structure that's to come from our DANI data. So as a sample benchmarking, you've got multiple projects. These are multiple deployments. Again, if you've got one deployment, that project list will just hit the normal UniPhi project list with some averages rebranded into the uniclass activity structure and the uniclass resource structure. So what it's costing a tunneling engineer on average, how much hours they're spending on it, and then a breakup of the activity and the resource and how much time they spent and what the average cost and the total cost was. So that's just a first pass output. And then also to demonstrate how this comes in, this is the same data set that this is hitting, this little web application in a Power BI connected model. So in this model, if I go to transform data, it's actually come from the lake. And so you would connect to the lake to get this data in. But again, you can see got the uniclass activities here and the resources with a confidence level. So then you get to see some of the underpinning data behind the silver and that led to the gold. So when you expand these, there's extra fields that you can pull in that bring in the confidence. So we're only 41% confident that these matches are good. And we're 70% confident on that one. And the way this data has come in is from a query to a data lake. So they come in with these Parquet files down here. And so the gold ones that you would be exposed to are the ones with the dim in front of it and the fact. So those 4 dimensions and the fact table there. So they're the gold Parquet files that you then add into the Power BI tables. And once you got them in there, you can do whatever visualization you like on that. And that's just a table, but you can pivot that into a column chart and create any other wondrous data as an output as a result. And so there's 3 different methodologies for getting access to that data as we speak, and more will grow as it evolves. But in terms of expectation, when you're connecting to data sources here, the one that we're using that brought that in the first place is in our Azure platform. That's why you need an Entra ID access into it. It'll be your own container. The container is a data lake. We're not being limited to that. If people wanted to use Databricks or other data container methods, we've got the capability to point the transformation engine to those instead. And then when you connect to that, it'll ask for a URL, which I don't have off the top of my head, but when you do that, you then get the interface I just showed you before for the query. You then have this interface come up and present you with the ability to transform them into tables. And away you go. If you use Claude Code and you vibe code that app, which is what I did to get this app up and running, it will work all of that out itself. It literally doesn't need any guidance. We plan to, if I go back to the PowerPoint for a moment, we plan to provide potentially an MCP server for that to help it read the information from the gold, so that your other tools don't need to understand how the relationships work between those tables. It'll tell it. Doesn't need to work it out. And away you go. Start building stuff, finding out insights about that data that you've used to run projects in the past and how it can guide you in the future. So that's the launch of UniPhi Chrysalis and what you can do with it. Hopefully that gave you some thoughts on what might be applicable to your particular deployment. And if you've got any questions, reach out to your account manager. And that all goes live on August 3rd. And we're starting a project with a global engineering business to put their data into this environment from that date. So hopefully they'll be good, what we call bleeding edge customers, and we can feed that back as a success story in about 3 months' time. That recording will be sent out to you post webinar. Really appreciate you dialing in, and see you at the next one. The final wrap-up summary webinar is on August 4th, and we'll go through extra features of the UniPhi 22 release that weren't in the first 3 webinars. I'll talk to you then.